Section 161 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. May 7th, 1846. Beloved, my thoughts go to you this morning, loving and blessing you. May God bless you for both his worlds, not for this alone. For me, if I can ever do or be anything to you, it will be my uttermost blessing of all I ever knew or could know as he knows. A year ago I thought, with a sort of mournful exultation, that I was pure of wishes. Now they recoil back on me in a springtide, flow back wave upon wave, till I should lose breath to speak them. And it is nothing to say that they concern another, for they are so much the more intensely mine, and of me. May God bless you, very dear, dearest. So I am to forget to-day, I am told in the letter. Ah, but I shall forget and remember what I please. In the meanwhile I was surprised, while writing thus to you this morning, as a good deed to begin with, by Miss Bailey's coming. Remembering the 7th of May, I forgot Thursday, which she had named for her visit, and altogether she took me by surprise. I thought it was Wednesday. She came, and then Mr. Kenyon came, and as they both went downstairs together, Mrs. Jameson came up. Miss Bailey is what is called strong-minded, and with all her feeling for art and beauty talks of utility like a utilitarian of the highest, and professes to receive nothing without proof, like a reasoner of the lowest. She told me with a frankness, for which I did not like her less, that she was a materialist of the strictest order, and believed in no soul and no future state. In the face of those conclusions, she said, she was calm and resigned. It is more than I could be, as I confessed. My whole nature would cry aloud against that most pitiful result of the struggle here, a wrestling only for the dust, and not for the crown. What a resistless melancholy would fall upon me if I had such thoughts, and what a dreadful indifference! All grief to have itself to end in, all joy to be based upon nothingness, all love to feel eternal separation under and over it. Dreary and ghastly it would be. I should not have strength to love you, I think, if I had such a miserable creed. And for life itself, would it be worth holding on such terms, with our blind ideals making mocks and mows at us whenever we turned? A game to throw up, this life would be, as not worth playing to an end. There's a fit letter for the 7th of May. But why was Thursday the 7th, and not Wednesday rather, which would have let me escape visitors? I thank God that I can look over the grave with you, past the grave, and hope to be worthier of you there at least. Mrs. Jameson did not say much, being hoarse and weak with a cold, but she told me of having met you at dinner, and found you very agreeable. Also beginning by a word about Professor Longfellow, who has married, it appears, and is a tolerably merciful husband for a poet, solving the problem of the possibility of such a thing, said she. Beginning so, she dropped into the subject of marriage generally, and was inclined to repropose Lady Mary Wortley Montague's Septennial Act, which might be a reform, perhaps. What do you think? Have I not altogether been listening to improving and memorable discourse on this 7th of May? The 9th will be more after my heart. I like Mrs. Jameson, mind, and I like her views on many subjects, exclusive of the Septennial Marriage Act, though. How you amuse me by your account of the sponsorship. The illustrious D'Orsay, with his paletot reputation, in a cleft stick of Alfred Tennyson. Bun in the distance. A curious combination it makes really. And you read it like a Vatis that you are. So, good night, dearest. I think of you behind all these passing clouds of subjects, my poet of the lyre and crown. Look down on your own. Ba. End of section 161.
Section 162, The Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Friday, postmark May 8, 1846. Look down on you, my bar? I would die for you with triumphant happiness, God knows, at a signal from your hand. But that look down? Never, though you bade me again and again, and in such words. I look up, always up, my bar. When I indulge in my deepest luxury, I make you stand. Do you not know that? I sit, and my bar chooses to let me sit, and stands by, understanding all the same how the relation really is between us. How I would, and do, kiss her feet, my queen's feet. Do you feel for me so, my love? I seldom dare to try and speak to you of your love for me. My love I am allowed to profess. I could not steadily, I have tried, whether you noticed it or no, and could not, say aloud, and you love me, because it is altogether a blessing of your gift, irrespective of my love to you, however it may go to increase it. Here are the words, however. Human conviction is weak enough, no doubt, but when I forget these words, and this answer of my heart to them, I cannot say it. May God bless you, dearest, dearest, my bar. I was at Mrs. Jameson's this morning. She spoke of you so as to make my heart tremble with very delight. I never liked her so much. I may say never liked her before, by comparison. She read me your 3 translations, clearly feeling their rare beauty, and now let me clap hands, my bar, and ask you who knows best. She means to print both versions, the blank verse and the latter rhymed one. Of course. But she said so many things, I must tell you tomorrow, if you remind me. She felt such gratifications, too, at your thinking her etching of St. Cecilia worthy to hang by your chair in your sight. Do you know, Bar, at the end, apropos of her breakfast, I fairly took her by both hands and shook them with a cordiality which I just reflect tardily may subject the literary character to a possible misconstruction. He must have wanted a breakfast, she will say. I am going to the museum on Monday with her to see Italian prints. I like her very much. And after breakfast Mr. Kenyon came in, and Mr. Betsy, and Mr. K means to make me go and see him next Monday also, I believe. But my seeing and hearing and enjoying, Saturday is my day for all that. Tomorrow, by this time, too great happiness it is, I know. And I too look long over the grave to follow you, my own heart's love. Let Mrs. Jameson repeal those acts, limit the 7 years to 7 days or less. What matters? If the 7 days have to be endured because of a law, then I see the weariness, of course. But in our case, if a benevolent legislature should inform me now that if I choose I may decline visiting you tomorrow, nefandum! Kiss me, my own Bar, and let the world legislate and decree and relieve and be otherwise notable, so they let me be your own for ever. R. End of section 162.
Section 163 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Sunday. Postmark, May 11th, 1846. Dearest, when you use such words as eligible, investment was it, and I do not protest seriously and at length, it is through the very absurdity and unnaturalness, as if you were to say that the last comet was made of macaroni, and Arago stood by, he would not think it worth while to confute you. Talking the worldly idiom, as you will tell me you just meant to do in those words, and considering the worldly considerations, while still the advantage is with you, I can do nothing that I can see but stand in your sunshine. I solemnly assure you that only the apparent fact of your loving me has overcome the scruple, which on this ground made me recoil from— well, there is no use now in talking, but for you to talk of what is eligible and ineligible for me is too absurd. Indeed it is. You might be richer, to be sure, but I like it better as it is, 100 times. I should choose it to be so, if it were left to my choice. In every other respect, using the world's measures, or the measure of the angel who measured the heavenly Jerusalem, you are beyond me, above me, and nothing but your love for me could have brought us to a level. My love for you could not have tried even. Now if I tease you with saying such things over and over, it is the right punishment for what you said yesterday about eligible marriages, now isn't it? But your conclusion then was right, for if you were twice yourself, with a duchy of the moon to boot, it would avail nothing. We should have to carry all this underground work on precisely the same. Miserable it is, nevertheless, only I keep my eyes from that side as far as I can. I keep my eyes on your face. Yesterday Henrietta told me that Lady Carmichael, a cousin of ours, met her at the Royal Academy, and took her aside to speak seriously to her, to observe that she looked thin and worried, and to urge her to act for herself. To say, too, that Mrs. Bayford, an old hereditary friend of ours, respected by us for all her serene, clear-headed views of most things, and of the strictest sect, too, for all domestic duties, did not like, as a mother, to give direct advice, but was of opinion that the case admitted certainly and plainly of the daughter's acting for herself. In fact, it was a message, sent under cover of a supposed irresponsibility, which is one of 100 proofs to show how this case is considered exceptional among our family friends, and that no very hard judgment will be passed at the latest. Only on other grounds I shall be blamed, and perhaps by another class of speakers. As for telling Mr. Kenyon, it is most unadvisable, both for his sake and ours. Did you never hear him talk of his organ of caution? We should involve him in ever so many fears for us, and force him to have his share of the odium at last. Papa would not speak to him again while he lived. And people might say Mr. Kenyon did it all. No, if we are to be self-willed, let us be self-willed. At least, let me. For you, of course, are free to follow your judgment in respect to your own friends. And then it is rather a matter of feeling with me, after all, that as I cannot give my confidence to my father, I should refuse it to others. I feel that a little. Henrietta will do nothing, I think, this year. There are considerations of convenience to prevent it, and it is better for us that it should be so, and will not be worse for her in the end. I wish that man were a little nobler, higher, more of a man. He is amiable, good-natured, easy-tempered, of good intentions in the main, but he eats and drinks and sleeps, and shows it all when he talks. Very popular in his regiment, very fond of his mother. There is good in him, of course, and for the rest— Dearest, to compare others with you would be too hard upon them. Besides, each is after his kind. Yet as far as love goes, and although this man sincerely loves my sister, I do believe, I admit to myself again and again that if you were to adopt such a bearing towards me as he does to her, I should break with you at once. And why? Not because I am spoiled, though you knit your brows and think so, nor because I am exacting and offensible, though you may fancy that too, nor because I hold loosely by you, dearest beloved, ready at a caprice to fall away, but because then I should know you did not love me enough to let you be happy hereafter with me, you who must love according to what you are. Greatly as you write Lurias. To-morrow shall you be at Mr. Kenyon's? To-morrow I shall hear. Nothing has happened since I saw you. May God bless you. Your own I am. End of section 163.
Section 164 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Sunday, postmark May the 11th, 1846. I am always telling you, because always feeling, that I can express nothing of what goes from my heart to you, my Bar. But there is a certain choice I have all along exercised of subjects on which I would try and express somewhat, while others might be let alone with less disadvantage. When we first met, it was in your thought that I loved you only for your poetry. I think you thought that, and because one might be imagined to love that and not you, because everybody must love it, indeed that is worthy, and yet needs not of necessity love you, yet might mistake or determine to love you through loving it. For all these reasons, there was not the immediate demand on me for a full expression of my admiration for your intellectuality. Do you see? Rather, it was proper to insist as little as possible on it and speak to the woman, simply. And so I have tried to speak, partly in truth, because I love her best, and love her mind by the light and warmth of her heart, reading her verses, saying, "And these are bars," not kissing her less because they spoke the verses. But it does not follow that I have lost the sense of any delight that has its source in you, my dearest, dearest, however I may choose to live habitually with certain others in preference. I would shut myself up with you and die to the world, and live out 50 long, long lives in bliss through your sole presence. But it is no less true that it will also be an ineffable pride, something too sweet for the name of pride, to avow myself before anyone whose good opinion I am soliciting to retain as so distinguished by you. It is too sweet indeed, so I guard against it. A frequent allusion to it might, as I stammer and make plain things unintelligible, might cause you to misconceive me, which would be dreadful. For after all, Bar's head has given the crown its worth, though a wondrous crown it is too. All this means, the avowal we were speaking of, will be a heart's pride above every other pride whenever you decide on making such an avowal. You will understand as you do ever your own R. On getting home I found letters and letters, the best being a summons to meet Tennyson at Moxon's on Tuesday, and the frightfulest— nay, I will send it. Now, Bar, hold my hand from the distant room, tighter than ever, at about 8 o'clock on Wednesday, for I must go, I fear, unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, etc., etc. Ea apece few. The Mr. Kenyon writes that his friend Commodore Jones has returned to England in bad health, that he must away to Portsmouth and see him, so I do not go on Monday. While I was away, Chorley's brother, John Chorley, called, having been put to the trouble of a journey hither for nothing. I have been out this morning, to church with my sister, and the sun shone almost oppressively, but now all is black and threatening. How I send my heart after your possible movements, my own all-beloved. Care for yourself and for me. But a few months more, if God shall please. May he bless you. Ever your own. Hail and rain at 3:45 o'clock. End of section 164. Section 165 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Monday, 4 o'clock. Postmark May the 11th, 1846. Sweetest, I have come this moment from town, and Mrs. Jameson, the Mark Antonio prince, kept us all the morning, and at last I said, "There is a letter for me at home which I must go and answer." And now I cannot answer it, but I can love you and say so. God bless you ever, dearest. I have read your letter, but only once. Now I shall begin my proper number of times. Ever your very own. End of section 165.
Section 166 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Monday, postmark May 12th, 1846. It is too bad, or too good, or something. Almost I could reproach you, and quite would thank you. Yet do not let it be so again. You are supernaturally kind, kindestest, bestestest, and so dearestest by the merest justice. Only to think of your hastening home, as if you were under an obligation to write to me in the face of the 7 worlds, that is too much, and shall not be again. Now see that it shall not. I seem to hear the rattling of the chain all this distance, and do for the future let it be otherwise. When you are kept in London, or in any way hindered or unwell, in any case of the sort, let the vow be kept by 1 line, which too late for the day's post may reach me the next day, and I shall not be uneasy at 8 o'clock, but wait as those who wait for the morning. In the meanwhile, how I thank you! The 2nd dear letter comes close in the footsteps of the first, as your goodnesses are so apt to do. Well, and whatever you may think about Wednesday, I am pleased, and feel every inclination to return thanks myself in reply to the Bishop of Lincoln. I sent the letter back lest you should want it. The worst is that you are likely to have a very bad headache with the noise and confusion, and the Bishop's blessing on the dramatists of England will not prevent it, I fear. Look what is inside of this letter. Look. I gathered it for you today when I was walking in the Regent's Park. Are you surprised? Arabelle and Flush and I were in the carriage, and the sun was shining with that green light through the trees, as if he carried down with him the very essence of the leaves to the ground, and I wished so much to walk through a half-open gate along a shaded path that we stopped the carriage and got out and walked, and I put both my feet on the grass, which was the strangest feeling, and gathered this laburnum for you. It hung quite high up on the tree, the little blossom did, and Arabelle said that certainly I could not reach it, but you see, it is a too generous return for all your flowers, or to speak seriously, a proof that I thought of you and wished for you, which it was natural to do, for I never enjoyed any of my excursions as I did today's. The standing under the trees and on the grass was so delightful. It was like a bit of that dreamland which is your especial dominion, and I felt joyful enough for the moment to look round for you as for the cause. It seemed illogical not to see you close by. And you were not far after all, if thoughts count as bringers near. Dearest, we shall walk together under the trees some day. And all those strange people moving about like phantoms of life, how wonderful it looked to me, and only you, the idea of you, and myself seemed to be real there. And Flush a little too. Ah, what, next to nonsense, in the first letter this morning. So you think that I meant to complain when we first met of your loving me only for my poetry, which I did not, simply because I did not believe that you loved me for any reason. For the rest, I am not over particular, I fancy, about what I may be loved for. There is no good reason for loving me, certainly, and my earnest desire, as I have said again and again, is that there should be by profession no reason at all. But if there is to be any sort of reason, why, one is as welcome as another. You may love me for my shoes if you like it, except that they wear out. I thought you did not love me at all. You loved out into the air, I thought. A love a priori, as the philosophers might say, and not by induction, anywise. Your only knowledge of me was by the poems, or most of it, and what knowledge could that be, when I feel myself so far below my own aspirations, morally, spiritually? So I thought you did not love me at all. I did not believe in miracles then, nor in divine legations, but my miracle is as good as Constantine's. You may tell your bishop on Wednesday, when he has delivered his charge. Is it 8 o'clock or 3? You write a figure which looks like both, or at least either. Love me, my only beloved, since you can. May God bless you. I am ever and wholly your Ba. Say how you are. End of section 166.
Section 167 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Tuesday. Postmark May 12, 1846. My Ba. Your flower is the one flower I have seen, or see, or shall see. When it fades, I will bless it till it shine. And when I can bless you no longer, it shall fade with me and my letters, and, perhaps, my ring. Ba, I was going to say, if you meant to make me most exquisitely happy, and you did surely mean it, well, you succeed, as you know, and I see you on the grass, and am with you as you properly acknowledge. And by this letter's presence and testimony, I may judge you to be not much the worse, not fatigued. Is it so? Oh, it was a good inspiration that led you through the half-opened gate and under the laburnum, and better still, that made you see us one day walking by the trees together, when all I shall say is, I hope, in spite of that felicity, to remember and feel this as vividly as now. For the chain you hear rattle, there comes the earthly mood again, and the inspiration goes away altogether. So, you being Miss Barrett and not my Ba for the moment, I will give you none of my and Ba's Siren Island illustrations, but ask you what a fine lady would say if you caught at her diamond necklace and cried, You shall wear no such chains. Indeed you shall not. Why, even Flush is proud of his corals and blue beads, you tell me. As for me, being used to bear sundry heavier chains than this of writing to you, owning the degradation of being, for instance, forced to respire so many times a minute in order to live, to go out into the open air so as to continue well, with many similarly affronting impositions on a free spirit, on the whole, I can very patiently submit to write a letter which is duly read and forgiven for its imperfections, and interpreted into a rationality, sometimes not its own, and then answered by the sweetest hand that ever ministered to the dearest, dearest Ba that ever was imagined or can be. Ba, there are 3 Sirens' Isles, you know. I shall infallibly get into the furthest of them, a full 30 yards from you and the tower, so as to need being written to. For the cicale make such a noise you will not be able to call to me, which is as well, for you may, that is I might, break my neck by a sudden leap on the needles of rocks, as I remember the boatman told me. As for what you wish yesterday, the mode of my expressing my love, I never think of it. I have none, no system, nor attempt at such a thing. I begin and end by saying, I love you, whatever comes of it. There is one obvious remark to make, however, that unless I had loved you, and felt that every instant of my life depended on you for its support and comfort, I should never have dreamed of what has been proposed and accepted. Your own goodness at the very beginning would have rendered that superfluous, for I was put in possession of your friendship, might write to you and receive letters, might even hope to see you as often as anybody. Would not this have sufficed of reasonable friendship? May not Mr. Kenyon be your satisfied friend? But all was different, and so I am blessed now, and can only bless you. But goodbye, dearest, till tomorrow, and next day, which is ours, at 8. 8, I conjecture my martyrdom may take place. Oh, Think of me and help me. I shall feel you, as ever. You forgot the letter after all. Can you send it? It may be convenient to produce, as I know nobody of them all. Terrible it is altogether. At 6 the dinner begins. I shall get behind my brother dramatists, and say very little about them even. Kiss me, in any case of failure or success, and the one will be forgotten, and the other doubled, centupled, to your own. End of section 167.
Section 168 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Tuesday, postmark May 13th, 1846. When you began to speak of the islands, the 3 islands, I thought you were going to propose that you should live in one, and Flush in one, and I in the 3rd, and almost it was so, only that you took, besides, the farthest for yourself. Observe, always I write nonsense when you send me a letter which moves me like this. Dearest, my own. To-day Mrs. Jameson has been here, and having left with me a proof about Titian, she comes again to-morrow to take it. I think her quite a lovable person now. I like her more and more. How she talked of you to-day and called you the most charming companion in the world, setting you, too, on your right throne, as poet of the age. Wouldn't it have been an effect in the midst of all if I had burst out crying? And what with being flurried, frightened, and a little nervous from not sleeping well last night, I assure you it was quite possible, but happily, on every account, I escaped that dramatic situation. I can't wish that she wouldn't talk of you as she does whenever she comes here. And then, to make it better, she told me how you had recited, in a voice and manner as good as singing, my Katharina. How are such things to be borne, do you think, when people are not made of marble? But I took a long breath, and held my mask on with both hands. You will tell me of the Marc Antonio prints, will you not? Remember them on Thursday. Raphaels, are they not? I shall expect ever so much teaching, and showing, and explaining. I, who have seen and heard nothing of pictures and music, from you, who know everything. So the cicale might not be too loud for that. Did ever any one say to you that you were like Raphael's portrait? Not in the eyes, which are quite different, but in the lower part of the face, the mouth, and also the brow. It has struck me sometimes, and I had it on my lips to-day as a question to Mrs. Jameson. I think I was mad to-day altogether, but she did not see it, I mean my madness, not your likeness, and went away unconsciously. Here at last is the letter. Careless that I was yesterday. And you take me to be too generous if you fancy that I proposed giving up the daily letter which is my daily bread. I meant only that you should not, for the sake of a particular post, tire yourself, hurry yourself, do what you did yesterday. As for the daily letter, I am Bar, not Miss Barrett. Now am I Miss Barrett? Am I not Bar rather, and you're Bar? I should like to hear what will be heard to-morrow. Oh, I should like to be under the table, or in a pasty, after the fashion of the Queen's dwarf, when Elizabeth was queen and Shakespeare poet. Shall you be nervous as I was with Mrs. Jameson? Oh no, why should you be nervous? You will do it all well and gracefully. I am not afraid for you. It is simply out of vainglory that I wish to be there. Only the dramatists of England, where in the world are they just now? Or will somebody prove 10 of them? Because naught after 1 makes exactly 10. Mr. Horn, indeed, but I wish the toast had been the poets of England rather. May God bless you, anyway. I love you, whatever comes of it. Yes, unless sorrow of yours should come of it. That is what I like to hear. Better it is than 1,000 praises of this thing and that thing, which never were mine, alas. Also loving me so, you can be made happy with laburnum leaves. Dearest, most dear, dare I speak, do you think? Exactly at 8 to-morrow, and exactly at 3 the next day, I shall be with you. being at any hour your very own. The walk did me no harm, but you say nothing of yourself. End of section 168.
Section 169 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Wednesday. Postmark May 13, 1846. Dearest, dearest, I shall be with you tomorrow and be comforted, and will tell you all about everything. I am a little tired, but very well. Altogether well, singularly so, and I do feel a little about tonight's affair, though you may not. You, indeed, to judge me by yourself. But after all, I do not greatly care. I can but get up and stammer and say thank you and sit down again like my betters. And, as I say and say, you are at the end of everything, so long as I find you. I hoped that Tennyson was to have been poet-respondent, but Moxon says no, and moreover that the committee had meant, and he supposed had acted upon their meaning, to offer me the choice of taking either qualification of poetry or the drama as mine. But they have altered their mind. As it is, observe, you will find a list of stewards in the last Athenaeum. Observe that they are all bishops or deans or doctors, and that all will be grave and heavy enough, I dare say. So I shall try and speak for about 5 minutes on the advantages of the press over the stage as a medium of communication of the drama, and so get done, if heaven please. I saw Tennyson last night, and... oh, let me tell you tomorrow. Also Severn I saw, Keats Severn, who brought his own posthumous picture of Keats, and talked pleasantly about him. And Shelley. Tennyson asked me what I thought of Shelley, in so many words. Moxon's care of him, Tennyson, not Severn, is the charmingest thing imaginable, and he seems to need it all, being in truth but a long, hazy kind of man, at least just after dinner. Yet there is something naïf about him too. The genius you see too. May God bless you, my dearest, dearest. Tomorrow repays for all. End of section 169.
Section 170 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Friday. Postmark May 15th. 1846. The treader on your footsteps was Miss Bailey, who left a card and would come another day. She must have seen you. One of these days Scirocco will be loose. We may as well be prepared for it. To keep it off as long as possible is all that can be. But when it comes it will not uproot my palm trees, I think, though it should throw flat the olives. Papa brought me some flowers yesterday when he came home, and they went a little to my heart as I took them. I put them into glasses near yours, and they look faded this morning nevertheless, while your roses, for all your cruelty to them, are luxuriant in beauty, as if they had just finished steeping themselves in garden dew. I look gravely from one set of flowers to the other. I cannot draw a glad omen. I wish he had not given me these. Dearest, there seems little kindness in teasing you with such thoughts, but they come and I write them, and let them come ever so sadly, I do not for a moment doubt, hesitate. One may falter where one does not fail. And for the rest, it is my fault, and not my sorrow rather, that we act so. It is by choice that we act so. If he had let me, I should have loved him out of a heart altogether open to him. It is not my fault that he would not let me. Now it is too late. I am not his nor my own any more. This morning I have had American letters of the kindest, from Massachusetts, and a review on my poems, quite extravagant indeed, in the Methodist Quarterly. One of these letters is so like another that I need only tell you one of them, written too by people, Lydias and Richards, never heard of before by either of us. The review repeats the fabulous story in the spirit of the age, about unknown tongues and a 7 years' eclipse in total darkness. But I say to myself, after all, the real myth is scarcely less wonderful. If I have not all this knowledge, I have you, which is greater, better. Not less wonderful, did I say, when it is the miracle. O these people, I am seized and bound. More to-night. From your own Bar. Say how you are. End of section 170.
Section 171 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Friday. Postmark May 15, 1846. The sun is warm, and the day, I suppose, is fine, but my bar will have been kept at home by the vile wind. Most vile. Even I feel it. So the spring passes away without the true spring feeling. All the blossoms are fast going already, and one's spirits are affected, I dare say. Did you not think me intolerable yesterday with my yawning and other signs of fatigue you noticed? Well, now, I do think a little is said by all that. One might not like or even love, just short of true love, so long as the spirits were buoyant and the mind cheerful. When the contrary befell, some change might appear, surely. The more I need you, the more I love you, Bar, and I need you always, in joy, to make the joy seem what it is, and in any melancholy that I can imagine, more still, infinitely more, I need you. Though melancholy I certainly was not, only tired a little. All I mean to say is that at times when I could, I think, shut up Shelley and turn aside from Beethoven and look away from my noble Polidoro, my bar's ring, not to say the hand. You know, Bar, what they are to me. I have to go out today, to my sorrow, to the Garrick Club and a friend there. My sister tells me we have to go to the flower show next Wednesday unless the day be rainy. I shall hear from Mr. Kenyon, I expect. Let me end the chapter we began yesterday about speech-making and adepts in it of various kinds by telling you my father made me laugh by an account of the other day, only it should really be told and not written. He had a curiosity to know how would-be parliamentary members canvassed, and as the Chamberlain of the City, Sir James Shaw, came to the bank for that purpose, there being livery men there, or whatever they are called, with votes, my father followed to hear how he would address people. Sir James, a gigantic man, went about as his friends directed, or rather pushed and shoved him, and whenever they reached an elector, the whole cortege stopped. Sir James made his speech, the friends, book and pencil in hand, recorded the promise the moment it was made, and forthwith wheeled round their candidate to the next man. No word of speechification being to be wasted once its object accomplished, since time pressed. So now fancy, friends, to Sir J, Mr. Snooks, Sir James. Sir J, with his eyes shut and head 2 feet above Snooks. When Charles Fox came to Parliament, he came into Parliament with a profusion of promises, of which I'll defy Charles Fox's best friends to say that he ever kept a single one. Friends twitch him. Thank you, sir. Mr. Smith. When Charles Fox came into Parliament, thank you, sir. Mr. Thompson. When Charles Fox, thank you, etc., etc., and so on from man to man, never getting beyond this instructive piece of anecdotal history, till at the very last, a little elector, reaching to the great man's elbow, let him go to the full length of the sentence's tether from admiration of such an orator, did not say briefly yes or no, as the others had done. So Sir James arrived duly at, kept a single one. Thus if, as it were, oh? Here he opened his eyes with a start, missing the pushing and driving from his friends in the rear, and finding it was only this little man. He abruptly stopped, was not going to spend more eloquence on him. There, Bar, you tell me you write nonsense. I do the thing, the precise thing. But no more nonsense, because I am going to kiss you, which is wise, and love you with my whole heart and soul forever, which is wiser, and pray you to love me, dear, dear Bar, which is the wisest. Sweetest, may God bless you, your very own. End of section 171.
Section 172 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Friday evening. Postmark May 16th, 1846. Not even do you yawn in vain then, O you, and this then is what Cicero called oscitan sapientia. The argument of the yawn ought in fact to be conclusive. But, dearest, if it was intolerable to see you yawn yesterday, still less supportable was it to-day, when I had all the yawning to myself, and proved nothing by it. Tired I am beyond your conceiving of tired. You saw how I broke off in my letter to you this morning. Well, that was Miss Heaton, who came yesterday and left a packet, you saw, and came again to-day and sate here exactly 3 hours. Now imagine that. 3 hours of incessant restless talking. At the end I was blanched, as everybody could see, and Mrs. Jameson, who came afterwards for 5 minutes, and was too unwell herself to stay, seriously exhorted me not to exert myself too much, lest I should pay the penalty. And I had not been downstairs even, only been ground down in the talking-mill. Arabel told her, too, before she came upstairs, that I was expecting a friend. "Oh," said she to me, "I shall go away directly anyone comes." And again presently, "Pray tell me when I ought to go away." As if I could say go. She deserved it, but I couldn't. And then, "How good of you to let me sit here and talk." So good of me, when I was wishing her, only at Leeds in the High Street, between a dissenter and a churchman. Anywhere but opposite to my eyes. Yet she has very bright ones, and cheeks redder than your roses, and she is kind and cordial, as I thought in the anguish of my soul when I tried to be grateful to her. Certainly I should have been more so if she had stayed a little less, talked a little less. It is awful to think how some women can talk. Happily she leaves London to-morrow morning, and will not be here again till next year, if then. She talked biography too. I did not mean to tell you, but it is better to tell you at once and have done. Only she desired me not to mention it. Only she little knew what she was doing. You will not mention it. She told me that her informant about Mr. Browning was a lady to whom he had been engaged, that there had been a very strong attachment on both sides, but that everything was broken off by her on the ground of religious differences, that it happened years ago, and that the lady was married. At first I exclaimed imprudently enough, but how could it be otherwise, that it was not true, but I caught at the bridle in a minute or two, and let her have it her own way. Do not answer this. It is nonsense, I know, but it helped to tire me with the rest. Wasn't it a delightful day for me? At the end of the 3 hours she threw her arms round me, and kissed me some half-dozen times, and wished me good-bye till next year. Wilson found me standing in the middle of the room, looking, as she said, like a ghost. And no wonder. The vile wind out of doors was nothing to it. Dearest, you are well? Your letter says nothing. Only one more letter, and then Monday. Ah, it is the sweetest of flattery to say that you need me, but isn't it difficult to understand? Yet while you even fancy that you have such a need, you may be sure, let Charles Fox break his promises ever so, of your own, Bar. End of section 172.
Section 173 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Saturday, Postmark, May the 16th, 1846. Then, dearest, do take Mrs. Jameson's advice. Do take care of the results of this fatigue. Why should you see any woman that pleases to ask to come? I am certain that some of the men you have refused to admit will be more considerate, and Miss Heaton must be a kind of fool into the bargain with her inconsiderateness, though that is the folly's very self. As for her Yorkshire tragedy, I held myself rather aggrieved by it. They used to get up better stories of Lord Byron, and even I told you, anticipatingly, that I caused that first wife of mine to drown and hang herself, whereas now it turns out she did neither, but bade me do both. Nay, was not my wife after all. I hope she told Miss Heaton the story in the presence of the husband who had no irreligious scruples. But enough of this pure nonsense. I had, by this post that brings me your last letter, one from Horn. He leaves today for Ireland, and says kind things about my plays, and unkind things of Mr. Powell. A dog he repudiates forever. So our clique is deprived of yet another member. For me, love, I am pretty well, but rather out of spirits, for no earthly cause. I shall take a walk and get better presently. Your dear letters have their due effect, all that effect. So, dear, all my world, my life, all I look to or live for, my own bar, I will bless you and bid you good-bye for today. Tomorrow I will write more, and on Monday. Return my bar this kiss, my dearest above all dearness. End of section 173.
Section 174 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Saturday morning. Postmark May 16th, 1846. You shall hear from me on this Sunday, though it cannot be as an answer, dearest, to your letter of to-night. But I being so wretchedly tired last night, and yawning being, to your mind, so intolerable, it is as well to leave a better impression with you than that, though there is nothing to say, and the east wind blows on virulently. The Athenaeum has put me out of humour for the day, besides. Not a word of Luria, not a word of the literary fund dinner, and the great drawling carrying out of the poetry for the million article. As if all this trash could not die of itself, as if it were not dead of itself. That the critics of a country should set themselves to such work is as if the Premier of England took his official seat in the window to kill flies, talking, with his first finger out, of my administration. Only flies are flies, and have fly life in them. They are nobler game than those. Mrs. Jameson, while she was here the 5 minutes yesterday, talked in an underbreath to my underbreath opposition her opinion about the present age. That the present age did not, could not, ought not to express itself by art, though the next age would. She is surprisingly wrong, it appears to me. There is no predominant character in the age, she says, to be so expressed. There is no unity to bear expression. But art surely, if art is anything, is the expression, not of the characteristics of an age except accidentally. Essentially, it is the expression of humanity in the individual being, and unless we are men no longer, I cannot conceive how such an argument as hers can be upheld for a moment. Also, it is exasperating to hear such things. Then I do not believe, for one, that genius in the arts is a mere reflection of the character of the times. Genius precedes, surely, initiates. It is genius which gives an age its character, and imposes its own colour. But I shall not write any more. Her paper on Titian's house at Venice, which she let me read the proof, and which is one of the essays she is printing now, is full of beauty and truth, and I admired it heartily. Then there is a quotation about the calm, cold, beautiful regard of Virgin Child and Saint, which you may remember perhaps. I know you will like the essay and feel it to be Venetian. That you were feeling the east wind, beloved, meant that you were not well, though you have quite left off telling me a word of yourself lately. And why? It shall not be so next week, now shall it? May God bless you. I am afraid of going downstairs, because of the double knocks. It will be great gain to have the loudest noises from the cicale, except when somebody else is noisy, which is a noise I am always forgetting, just as if it were impossible. Your own Ba. End of section 174.
Section 175 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Sunday, day before tomorrow. Postmark, May 18, 1846. How kind to write to me and help me through the gloomy day with a light. I could certainly feel my way in the dark and reach tomorrow without very important stumbling. But now I go cheerfully on, in spite of a little headache and weariness. Need you? I should hate life apart from you. Knowing what I say, I should hate it. The life of my soul is seen apart from that of the mere body, to the necessities of which, no human being ever ministered before, and which, now that I have known you, I myself cannot provide for, or could not were you removed, even after the imperfect fashion of former times. If you ask Mrs. Jameson, she will tell you, if she has thought it worth remembering, that I once, 2 or 3 years ago, explained to her that I could not believe in love or understand it, nor be subject to it consequently. I said, all you describe as characteristics of the passion, I should expect to find in men more easily and completely. Now I know better, and my year's life spent in this knowledge makes all before it look pale, and all after, if an after could come, look black. Why do I write so? I am rather dull this horrible day, and cling to you the closelier. All you write about art is most true. Carlyle has turned and forged, reforged on his anvil the fact that no age ever appeared heroic to itself, and so worthy of reproduction in art by itself. I thought after Carlyle's endeavours nobody could be ignorant of that, nobody who was obliged to seek the proof of it out of his own experience. The cant is that an age of transition is the melancholy thing to contemplate and delineate, whereas the worst things of all to look back on are times of comparative standing still, rounded in their important completeness. So the young England imbeciles hold that belief is the admirable point. In what? They judge comparatively immaterial. The other day I took up a book 2 centuries old in which glory, soldiering, rushing to conquer, and the rest were most thoroughly believed in, and if by some miracle the writer had conceived and described some unbeliever, unable to rush to conquer the Parthians, etc., it would have been as though you found a green bough inside a truss of straw. But you know, and I know one thing, one, but one. I love you, shall love you ever, living and dying your own. End of section 175.
Section 176 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Tuesday morning. Postmark May 19th, 1846. My own ever dearest, when I try to thank you for such a letter as yesterday's, for any proof, in fact, of your affection, I cannot speak, but you know of this and all things that I understand, feel, you must know it very well. There is only one thing I can do as I ought, and it is to love you, and the more I live, not the less, but the more, I am able to love you, believe it of me, and for the less, we will never return to that foolish subject. But for the less you spoke of when you said you do not love me less, Why, I thought at the moment, and feel now, that it would be too late, as I am ever, upon any possible ground, to love you less. If you loved me less even, or, to leave that, if you were to come to me and say that you had murdered a man, why, I may imagine such things, you know, but I cannot imagine the possibility of my loving you less, as a consequence of your failing so. I am yours in the deepest of my affections, not unreasonably, certainly, as I see you and know you, but if it were to turn unreasonable, I mean, if you took away the appearance of reasonableness, still I should be yours in the deepest of my affections. It is too late for a difference there. Mrs. Jameson has just now sent me a proof with the daughters of Pandarus, which she is to call for presently, and therefore I must come to an end with this note. How I shall think of you to-morrow, and if it should be fine, I may perhaps drive in the park near the gardens, take my sisters to the gate of the gardens, and feel that you are inside. That will be something, if it is feasible. And if it is fine or not, and if I go or not, I shall remember our first day, the only day of my life which God blessed visibly to me, the only day undimmed with a cloud, my great compensation day, which it was worth while being born for. Your very own Bar. Oh, you will not see me to-morrow, remember. I tell you only out of cunning, to win a thought. End of section 176.
Section 177 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Tuesday. Postmark, May 19, 1846. With this day expires the first year since you have been yourself to me. Putting aside the anticipations and prognostications, and even assurances from all reason short of absolute sight and hearing, excluding the 5 or 6 months of these, there remains a year of this intimacy. You accuse me of talking extravagantly sometimes. I will be quiet here. Is the tone too subdued if I say such a life, made up of such years? I would deliberately take rather than any other imaginable one in which fame and worldly prosperity and the love of the whole human race should combine, excluding that of yours to which I hearken. Only wishing the rest were there for a moment, that you might see and know that I did turn from them to you. My dearest, inexpressibly dearest, how can I thank you? I feel sure you need not have been so kind to me, so perfectly kind and good. I should have remained your own, gratefully, entirely your own, through the bare permission to love you, or even without it, seeing that I never dreamed of stipulating at the beginning for a return and reward. But I also believe, joyfully, that no course but the course you have taken would have raised me above my very self, as I feel on looking back. I began by loving you in comparison with all the world. Now I love you, my Bar, in the face of your past self, as I remember it. All words are foolish, but I kiss your feet and offer you my heart and soul, dearest, dearest Bar. I left you last evening without the usual privilege. You did not rise, Bar, but I don't know why. I got nervous of a sudden. It seemed late, and I remembered the drawing-room and its occupants. End of section 177.
Section 178 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Tuesday evening. Postmark, May 20th, 1846. Do you remember how, when poor Abu Hassan, in the Arabian story, awakens from sleep in the Sultan's chamber to the sound of instruments of music, he is presently complimented by the Grand Vizier on the royal wisdom displayed throughout his reign? Do you remember? because just as he listened, do I listen when you talk to me about the course I have taken, I who have just had the wit to sit still in my chair with my eyes half shut, and dream, dream. Ah, whether I am asleep or awake, what do I know, even now? As to the course I have taken, it has been somewhere among the stars, or under the trees of the Hesperides at lowest. Why, how can I write to you such foolishness? Rather I should be serious, grave, and keep away from myths and images, and speak the truth plainly. And speaking the truth plainly, I, when I look back, dearest beloved, see that you have done for me everything, instead of my doing anything for you. That you have lifted me. Can I speak? Heavens, how I had different thoughts of you and of myself, and of the world and of life, last year at this hour. The spirits who look backward over the grave cannot feel much otherwise from my feeling as I look back. As to your thanking me, that is monstrous, it seems to me. It is the action of your own heart alone which has appeared to do you any good. For myself, if I do not spoil your life, it is the nearest to deserving thanks that I can come. Think what I was when you saw me first, laid there on the sofa as an object of the merest compassion, and of a sadder spirit than even the face showed. And then think of all your generosity and persistence in goodness. Think of it. Shall I ever cease? Not while the heart beats, which beats for you. And now as the year has rounded itself to the perfect round, I will speak of that first letter about which so many words were, just to say this time that I am glad now, yes, glad, as we were to have a miracle, to have it so, a born miracle from the beginning. I feel glad now that nothing was between the knowing and the loving, and that the beloved eyes were never cold discerners and analyzers of me at any time. I am glad and grateful to you, my own altogether dearest. Yet the letter was read in pain and agitation, and you have scarcely guessed how much. I could not sleep night after night, could not, and my fear was at nights, lest the feverishness should make me talk deliriously and tell the secret aloud. Judge if the deeps of my heart were not shaken. From the first you had that power over me, notwithstanding those convictions which I also had, and which you know. For it was not the character of the letter apart from you which shook me. I could prove that to you. I received and answered very calmly, with most absolute calmness, a letter of the kind last summer, knowing in respect to the writer of it, just as I thought of you, that a moment's enthusiasm had carried him a good way past his discretion. I am sure that he was perfectly satisfied with my way of answering his letter, as I was myself. But you, I could not escape so from you. You were stronger than I, from the beginning, and I felt the mastery in you by the first word and first look. Dearest and most generous, no man was ever like you, I know. May God keep me from laying a blot on one day of yours, on 1 hour, and rather blot out mine. For my life it is yours, as this year has been yours. But how can it make you happy, such a thing as my life? There, I wonder still. It never made me happy without you. Your very own Bar. Mrs. Jameson was here to-day and brought a message from Mr. Kenyon, who comes to-morrow at 1. The son does not promise to come besides, does he? Mrs. Jameson goes to Brighton on Thursday, and returns in a day or 2 to spend another month or 6 weeks in town, changing her lodgings. End of section 178.
Section 179 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Wednesday. Postmark May 20, 1846. My Bar, I can just kneel down to you and be kissed. I can do no more, nor speak, nor thank you, and I seem to have no more chance of getting you love to give you. All is given. So as I have said before, and must keep saying now. All of me is your very own. My sister, whose engagement, and not mine this was, decides to act according to the letter of Mr. Kenyon's kind instructions, and keeps at home on account of the rain. She is very subject to colds and sore throat, which the least dampness underfoot is sure to produce in her. So I am not near you. You would not go, however, I think would not go, to the park gate, as you conditionally promised. I do not, therefore, miss my flower show, my rose tree that beareth 7 times 7. But the other chance which your last letter apprises me of, the visit of Mr. Kenyon, which by going in time to him I might perhaps make my own too, that, on a second thought, I determined to forego, because it jeopardizes my Saturday, which will be worth so many, many such visits. Does it not? There is no precedent in our golden year for 3 visits taking place in a single week, not even in that end of October when all the doubt was about the voyage. How I remember! I shall be more with you than if in the presence of people before whom I may not say Miss Barrett with impunity while professing to talk of Miss... I forget who. But more with you, I who am always with you in the spirit, always yearning to be with you in the body, always, when with you, praying as for the happiest of fortunes, that I may remain with you for ever. So may it be. Praise your own R. End of section 179.
Section 180 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Wednesday, May 20th. Was it very wrong of me that never did I once think of the possibility of your coming here with Mr. Kenyon? Never once had I the thought of it. If I had, I should have put it away by saying aloud, "Don't come," because, as you say, it would have prevented Saturday's coming, the coming to-day would, and also, as you do not say, it would have been infinitely hard for me to meet you and Mr. Kenyon in one battalion. Oh, no, no. The gods forfend that you should come in that way. It was bad enough as it was, to-day, when while he sate here his 10 minutes, first showing me a sonnet from America, which began, "Daughter of Grecian genius," he turned those horrible spectacles full on me and asked, "Does Mrs. Jameson know that Mr. Browning comes here?" "No," said I, suddenly abashed, though I had borne the sonnet like a hero. "Well, then, I advise you to give directions to the servants that when she or anyone else asks for you, they should not say, 'Mr. Browning is with you,' as they said the other day to Miss Bailey, who told me of it. Now wasn't that pleasant to hear?" I thanked him for his advice, and felt as uncomfortable as was well possible, and am at this moment a little in doubt how he was thinking while he spoke. Perhaps after the fashion of my sisters, when they cry out, such a state of things never was heard of before. Not that they have uttered one word of opposition, not, from the first they knew, understand, but that they are frightened at what may be said by people who take for granted that we are strangers, you and I, to one another. Ah, a little more, a little less, of what consequence is it? Such a day to-day. It was finer last year, I remember. And Tuesday instead of Wednesday. Your sister was right, very right, though mine went, but the distance was less with us. A party of 12 went from this house, among us, but not of us. For my part, I have not stirred from my room, of course. The carriage was out of the question. And if you please, I never promised to be at the park gate. Oh, indeed, I never meditated seeing you even from afar. I thought only that I should hear a little distant music, and remember that, where it sounded, you were, that was all. And too much the stars made out, and so drove down the clouds. Poor Mr. Kenyon was grave, depressed about his friend, who is in a desperate state, dying in fact. He returns to Portsmouth to-morrow to be with him till the change comes. Dearest, how are you? Never now will you condescend to say how you are, which is not to be allowed in this second year of our reign. I am very well. Yesterday I heard some delightful matrimonial details of an establishment in Regent's Park, quite like an old pastoral in the quickness of the repartee. I hate you. I abhor you. I never liked you. I always detested you. A cup and saucer thrown bodily here by the lady, on which the gentleman upsets her, chair and all, flat on the floor. The witness, who is a friend of mine, gets frightened and begins to cry. She was invited to the house to be godmother to their child, and now she is pressed to stay longer to witness the articles of separation. Oh, I suppose such things are common enough. But what is remarkable here is the fact that neither party is a poet by the remotest courtesy. Good night, dearest. I am your Ba. End of section 180.
Section 181 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Thursday. Postmark, May the 21st, 1846. Just as I write, the weather is a little more proper for this, the blessed Ascension Day of the cheerful month of May. May you not go out therefore, my Bar? Or downstairs at all events. We were sorry, Sariana and I, to see the bright afternoon yesterday. We ought to have gone, perhaps. But Mr. Kenyon is good and will understand, spite of the spectacles. But what sonnet is that, you perverse Bar, of which you give me the 2 or 3 words, in print? How? Where? And if I do not request and request, I'll be sure to hear nothing of that American Review again. So I do request, Bar. Last night brought Dickens pictures from Italy, which I read this morning. He seems to have expended his power on the least interesting places, and then gone on hurriedly seeing or describing less and less, till at last the mere names of places do duty for pictures of them. And at Naples he fairly gives it up, the Vesuvius journey excepted. But the book is readable and clever. Shall I bring it? Or next week, when everybody here has done with it? I know, dearest, you do not promise me that beatific vision by the gate, but was not enough said to justify me in waiting for you there? Indeed, yes. Only the rain and wind seemed to forbid you, as they did. Were your sisters pleased? I am not sure I should have been glad to meet them so. I could not have left my sister, whom nobody would have known, and then with that unspoken secret between us. Also, I pleased myself by hoping that Mr. Kenyon was only relieved of a great trouble and annoyance in the present state of his anxieties by our keeping away. Poor Captain Jones! Really a fine, manly, noble fellow. I am heartily sorry. As for me, since Bar asks, I am pretty well. Much better in some points, and no worse in the rest. All is right, but the little sound in the head which will be intrusive. But I must walk it away presently, or think it away at worst. For dearest, dearest Bar, I can cure all pains at once with you to think of, and to love, and to bless. So bless you. Your R. End of section 181.
Section 182 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Thursday. Postmark May 22nd, 1846. Dearest, when your letter came, I was cutting open the leaves of Dickens' Letters from Italy, which Papa had brought in, so I am glad to have your thoughts of the book to begin with. Before your letter came, I had sent you the review, as you will find. What changes, what changes! And the sonnet was purely manuscript, and for the good of the world should remain so. Oh, you cannot care for all this trash, such trash. Why, I had a manuscript sonnet sent to me last autumn by a person or persons unknown, to E.B.B. on her departure from England to Pisa. Can you fancy that melodious piece of gossiping? Then a lady of the city, famous, I believe, for haberdashery, used to address all her poems to me, which really was original, for she would write 5 or 6 poems on an evening, and sweep them up and send them to me once a fortnight, upon faith, hope, and charity, seaweed and moonshine, corn laws, and the immortality of the soul, and take me for her standing muse, properly thou'd and thee'd all through. What a good vengeance it would be upon your unjust charges, if I set you to read a volume or 2 of those poems, which all went into the fire, so you need not be frightened. And to-day I had a rose-tree sent to me by somebody who has laid close siege to me this long while, and whom I have escaped hitherto, but who has encamped, she says, till July in 16 Wimpole Street. She writes, too, on her card, "When are you going to Italy?" Ah, you who blame me, half blame me, for seeing women, do not know how difficult it is to help it sometimes without being in appearance ungrateful and almost brutal. Just because I am unwell, they tease me more, I believe. Now that Miss Heaton, oh, I need not go back, but it was not of my choice, be sure. You being a man are different, and perhaps you make people afraid and keep them off. They do not thrust their hands through the bars where the lion is, as they do with the giraffe. Once I had this proposition, "If we mayn't come in, will you stand up at the window that we may see?" Now, and there's the essence of at least 10 manuscript sonnets. So don't complain any more. As for Mr. Kenyon, he had his collation, I understand, and he said that he was expecting Mrs. Jameson and sundries, but he referred to some friends from the country who would not be so mad as to come, and whom I knew to be yourselves. You were quite right not to come. To-day you are right, too, in thinking that I was out. I was in the park nearly an hour, Arabel and Flush and I, and perhaps if to-morrow should be fine, I may walk in the street. So think of me and help me. This is my last letter before I see you again, dear, dearest. Oh, but I heard yesterday, and it was not a tradition of the elders this time. It was vivid in the pages of contemporary history. In fact, one of my brothers heard it at the flower show and brought it home as the newest news. That Mr. Browning is to be married immediately to Miss Campbell. The tellers of the news were intimate friends of yours, they said, and knew it from the highest authority. Laugh. Why should not they talk, being women? My brother did not tell me, but he told it downstairs, and Arabel was amused, she said, at some of the faces round. At that turn of the road they lost the track of the hare. Not an observation was made by anybody. May God bless you. Think of me. I am ever and ever your own Bar. End of section 182. Section 183 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Thursday. This is not to be called a letter, please to understand, because to write a letter to you once a day is enough in all reason. But I want to send you the review you asked for at the same time with the drawings, which I kept too long, I thought, months ago. But I have looked over them again and again. Then there is the book on juniors, and lastly the song which I want you to have. The Toll Slowly. That is my gift to you, for as much as it is worth, and not to be sent back to me, if you please. As for the notes on Naples, I shall keep them for the present, having need to study about Amalfi. Now I am going out in the carriage, and shall drive round the park perhaps. You will not think much of the music, but it being the first music I had heard for years and years, and in itself so overwhelmingly melancholy, It affected me so that I should scarcely hear it to the end. I went downstairs on purpose to hear it, and be able to thank the composer rightly. But she has done better things, I am sure. Your own Ba. Observe, I disobey in nothing by sending this parcel. There is too much for you to carry. Don't forget to bring me my statesman, which is a lawful burden. End of section 183.
Section 184 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Friday. Postmark, May 22, 1846. I have a great mind to retract. I do retract altogether whatever I said the other day in explanation of Miss Heaton's story. And make no doubt now, 'twas a pure dream to which my over-scrupulousness of conscience gave a local habitation and name both, through the favourable dimness and illusion of a good many years ago, because this last charge about Miss Campbell, briefly, I never in my life saw, to my knowledge, a woman of that name. Nor can there be any woman of any other name from my acquaintance with whom the merest misunderstanding of the world could possibly arise to a third person. I mean that it must be a simple falsehood, and not gossip or distortion of fact, as I supposed in the other case. I told you of the one instance where such distortion might take place. Miss Howarth, to avoid mistake. This charge after the other, I will tell you of what it reminds me. In my early boyhood, I had a habit of calling people fools with as little reverence as could be, and it used to be solemnly represented to me after such offences that whoso calleth his brother fool is in danger, etc., for he hath committed murder in his heart already, etc., in short. There was no help for it. I stood there a convicted murderer, to which I was forced penitently to agree. Here is Miss Heaton's charge and my confession. Now let a policeman come here presently to ask what I know about the Deptford murder or the Marshalsea massacre, and you will have my intimate friend's charge. By the way, did your brother overhear this, or was it spoken to someone in his company? Or is my friend his acquaintance also? Because in either of the latter cases I can infer easily. There is a Mr. Browning, Henry, I think, living in or near the Regent's Park. At all events, please say that I know no such person, nor ever knew, that the whole is a pure falsehood, and I only use so mild a word because I write to you, and because on reading the letter again I see the speakers were women. It is a fact that I have made myself almost ridiculous by a kind of male prudery with respect to young ladies, that I have seemed to imply, if I gave you the least encouragement, something would be sure to follow. In fact, never seeing any attractiveness in the class, I was very little inclined to get involved in troubles and troubles for nothing at all. As for marrying, that is a point on which I have certainly not chosen to dilate before you, nor shall I now dilate on it. Well, I shall see you to-morrow. That remedies everything. And that is your way of letting me see the review. You send it. Not that it has arrived yet. Dear Bar, however good you are. All about the lady enthusiasts makes me laugh. Don't think I fail of the proper respect to them, however. It is only once in a week that one sees a real painted emperor settle on a flower, and then perhaps for a few minutes, while at all times, if you look, you will find a good half-dozen of earnest yet sleepy drones living there, working away at the sweet. After all, these get the most out of the flower. Did you really go out yesterday? I was not sure, for the wind was easterly, but it appears to have done you no harm. You may go into the street today. I am most happy, and always entirely happy in you, in thinking of you, and hoping. My life is in you now. Bless you, dearest. I am your own. 2:00, the parcel arrives. Thank you, best of bars. I will read and tell you. Only what on earth do you mean by sending back those sketches? End of section 184. Section 185 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Sunday morning. Postmark, May 25, 1846. My own Bar is entreated to observe that when she sends me reviews about herself and songs by herself, and a make-weight book about Junius happens to be sent also, I do not ordinarily plunge into the Junius discussion at once. Perhaps from having made up my mind that the author is Miss Campbell. At all events, while the review was read and re-read, and the music done justice and injustice to, the Junius was opened for the first time this morning at 8 o'clock, and Barr's letter, which lay between pages 16 and 17, came to hand. It was brought to me by my mother, from my father, but for whose lucky inspiration of curiosity the said note had perhaps lain shut in till the book's secret was found out. Certainly I should never have touched the book before then. And from this note, duly studied, I learned that yesterday I must have appeared to Barr touched by a general mental paralysis, inasmuch as I was surprised, over and above the joyfulness to hear that she was in the park on Thursday as well as Friday. Oh, I know the letter I did receive mentioned it, but it seems as if one of the two excursions were unrecorded. And seeing that I inquired whether Barr had heard with her only as the song, and altogether omitted thanking her for the gift of it, and lastly brought no statesman, even on Barr's request, all of which matters I ought to have been made acquainted by the note. What must you think of me, you Barr? Dearest, dearest, that expect me to know the face through the bonnet and the letter through the book covers. Barr sitting in the bookseller's shop was a type, I see. What did you think of me yesterday? I want to know. Well, and now my letter does come, I thank you, for all the trouble this precedent will give me, next time the parcel comes, of poking into all impossible places to see, and to see. You are the dearest, dearest, impossibly dear Barr that heart ever adored, and the roses which thou strowest, or the cheerful way thou goest, would direct to follow thee, as Shirley sings. And every now and then the full sense of the sweetness collects itself, and overcomes me entirely, as now, on the occasion of this note that I find. I am blessed by you in the 100 unspeakable ways, but were it only for this and similar pure kindness, I find it in my heart to give you my life could it profit you. Here ought I, by every law and right and propriety, ask Miss Campbell, to be ministering to you, caring for you, and, oh, Barr, do please, please throw a coffee cup at me, giving some grounds for complaint, and after it the soucoupe, glaring with saucer eyes, and see what you shall see, and hear what you shall hear, you strongest woman that has written yet. Have they found that out? I know it, I think, by this. So I will go and think it over in the garden, and tell you more in the afternoon. 12 o'clock. What strange weather! But pleasant, I think. You have been out, or will go out, perhaps. Tell me all, dearest, and how you feel after it. Tomorrow I will send you the review and some of the other books you have spoken of from time to time. But I almost dare to keep the Statesman, spite of your positive request. Why, dear, want to see what I desire to forget altogether? So my other poems, Sordello, etc., I most unaffectedly shudder at the notion of your reading them, as I said yesterday. My poetry is far from the completest expression of my being. I hate to refer to it, or I could tell you why, wherefore, prove how imperfect, for a mild word, how unsatisfactory it must of necessity be. Still, I should not so much object, if, such as it is, it were the best, the flower of my life. But that is all to come, and through you mainly, or more certainly. So will it not be better to let me write one last poem this summer, quite easily, stringing every day's thoughts instead of letting them fall, and laying them at the dear feet at the summer's end for a memorial? I've been almost determining to do this, or try to do it, as I walked in the garden just now. A poem to publish or not to publish, but a proper introduction to the afterwork. What do you think, my Bar? My dearest siren and muse, and mistress, and something beyond all, above all, and better. Shall I do this? And what are you studying about Amalfi, my Bar? Will you please keep that Naples notebook till I ask for it? At Amalfi. Till Holy Church incorporate two and one, and I take the degree of my aspiration. Robert Browning, B.A., in earnest of which, kiss me, dear, earnest, most earnest of poets, and let me kiss you as I do, loving you as I love you, bless you, best and dearest. End of section 185.
Section 186 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Sunday. Postmark May 25th, 1846. When you came yesterday, I had scarcely done my grumbling over the Athenaeum, which really seems to me to select its subjects from the things least likely to interest and elevate. It goes on its own level, perhaps, but to call itself a journal of art and literature afterwards is too much to bear patiently when one turns it over and considers. Lady Hester Stanhope's Physician, Antiquities of the Mayors of London, stories recollected from the magazines by Signor Marcotti, and this is literature, art. Without thinking of Luria, it is natural and righteous to be angry even after the sun has gone down. These are your teachers, O Israel. Mr. Dilke may well fly to the Daily News for congenial occupation and leave literature behind him, and nobody hang on the wheels of his chariot crying, "Come back, Mr. Dilke." Talking of chariots, George met you, he said, yesterday, wheeling down Oxford Street. This he told me when he came in, going as fast as an express train, and far too fast, of course, either to recognize or be recognized. Oh, I forgot to tell you one thing about the review in the Methodist Quarterly. You observed there some very absurd remarks about Tennyson, but just there is an extract from The Spirit of the Age about his coming out of himself as the nightingale from under the leaves. You see that? Well, it is curious that precisely what is quoted there is some of my writing when I contributed to Mr. Horne's book. It amused me to recognize it, as you did not, George, but I was vexed too at the foolish deduction, because in the midst I had to hold my Sunday levee, when for the only day in the week and for 1/2 hour I have to see all my brothers and sisters at once, on the weekdays one being in one place and one in another, and the visits to me only coming by 2s and 3s. Well, and Alfred, who never had said a word to me before, gave me the opportunity of saying, No, it is not true, followed hard by a remark from somebody else that, of course, Bar must know, as she and Mr. Browning are such very intimate friends, and a good deal of laughter on all sides. On which, without any transition, and with an exceeding impertinence, Alfred threw himself down on the sofa, and declared that he felt inclined to be very ill, for that then, perhaps, such things being heard of, some young lady might come to visit him to talk sympathetically on the broad and narrow gauge. Altogether, I shall leave you for the future to contradict yourself. I did not mean to do it this time, only that Alfred forced me into it. But he said, How the Miss Cokers praised him! It was delightful, they cried, to see a man of such a great genius condescend to little people like them. So they are better than the Athenaeum, and I shall not have them spoken of ungently, mind, even if they do romance a little wildly, and marry me, next time, to the man in the moon. In the meantime, dearest, it is no moonshine that I was out walking to-day again, and that I walked up all these stairs with my own feet on returning. I sate down on the stairs 2 or 3 times, but I could not rest in the drawing-room, because somebody was there, and I was not carried as usual. See how vainglorious I am! And what a summer sense in the air, and how lovely the strips of sky between the houses! And yet I may tell you truly, that constantly through these vivid impressions I am thinking and feeling that mournful and bitter would be to me this return into life apart from you, apart from the consideration of you. How could I ever have borne it, I keep feeling constantly. But you are there in the place of memory. Ah, you said yesterday that you were not ungrateful. I cannot say so. I blame myself often. And yet again I think that the wrong may be pardoned to me, for that those affections had worked out on me their uttermost pang. Nearly unto death I had felt them, and now if I am to live, it must be by other means, or I should die still and not live. Also I owe you gratitude. Do I not owe you gratitude? Then I cannot help it. Right or wrong, I cannot help it. You are all to me, and, beloved, whichever way I look, I only can see you. If wrong, it is not for you to be severe on me. Your own Bar. End of section 186.
Section 187 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Monday, 12 o'clock. I get nothing by the post this morning. Perhaps at the next delivery. Well, I had the unexpected largesse yesterday, you know. At this time last year the letters came once a week. Now the mana falls as mana should, omitting only the 7th day. Do you know, my Bar, the Campbell mystery is all but solved to my thinking, by supposing, as one may, that those foolish ladies confound their cousin's friend Brown, an indubitable Scot and Lord Geoffrey's nephew, and they're intimate for aught I know, with me. He is in town now, did dine with them just before I saw him a fortnight ago, and may meditate happiness with Miss Campbell, and be provided with a paragon of a sister besides. Those ladies have been to Scotland, may easily know him there as he sights with him there. Is not all this likely? It is not worth writing about to White, nor a visit to him at Doctors' Commons, but when I next chance on his company I will inquire. Here is the review, which I like very much. The introductory abstract remarks might be better, but so it always is, when a man, having really something to say about one precise thing, your poems, thinks he had better preface it by a little graceful generality. All he wanted to write, I agree in, thoroughly agree, though I cannot but fancy my own selection, that might be, of passages and single poems. And, dearest, I venture to keep back the Statesman, as I asked leave to do yesterday, for the reasons then given. May I keep it back? Also, I returned those sketches. Now they have been in your hand, they cannot lie about here. I keep brown paper with your writing on it, and string, and the wrappage of this pen of mine, to be sure, so I will get you to bear with them again, 2 or 3 being added, just as I find them. There is, too, the Ode, which was presented to me on my departure from Rome by an enthusiastic Roman, red ribbon and all. And last of all, you have my play as altered by Macready. Greater excisions had been determined on, but the appearance of the printed copy had the effect it intended. It would have been too ludicrous to leave out the whole of the first scene, for instance, as was in contemplation, and then to tell the public my play had been acted. I refer to the silly business only to show you what success or non-success on the stage means and is worth. It is all behind me now, so far behind. Now I will wait and see what next post may bring me from dearest Bar. Bar the dear and the beloved, e soprattutto the tall. Does she not stand high in the affection of her very own R.B.? End of section 187. Section 188 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Monday. Postmark May 25, 1846. Dear, dear love, your letter comes at 3:30 by a new postman. Very bewildered. You will perhaps have received my parcel and note. If not, such things are on the road. All in your note delights me entirely. As for my walking fast, that is exactly my use and wont. I am famous for it, as my father is for driving old lady friends into illnesses, and then saying innocently, "I took care to walk very slowly." When I have anything to occupy my mind, I all but run. But the pen can't run, for this letter must go, and nothing said. So, Bar, my Bar, goodbye till tomorrow from your own. End of section 188.
Section 189 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Monday morning. Postmark May 26, 1846. My beloved, I scarcely know what to say about the poem. It is almost profane and a sin to keep you from writing it when your mind goes that way. Yet I am afraid that you cannot begin without doing too much and without suffering as a consequence in your head. Now, if you make yourself ill, what will be the end? So you see my fears. Let it be, however, as it must be. Only you will promise to keep from all excesses and to write very, very gently. Ah, can you keep such a promise, if it is made ever so? There are the fears again. You are very strange in what you say about my reading your poetry, as if it were not my particular gladness and glory, my own, which no man can take from me, and not you indeed. Yet I am not likely to mistake your poetry for the flower of your nature, knowing what that flower is, knowing something of what that flower is without a name, and feeling something of the mystical perfume of it. When I said, or when others said for me, that my poetry was the flower of me, was it praise, did you think, or blame? Might it not stand for a sarcasm? It might, if it were not true, miserably true after a fashion. Yet something of the sort is true, of course, with all poets, who write directly from their personal experience and emotions. Their ideal rises to the surface, and floats like the bell of the water-lily. The roots and the muddy water are sub audita, you know, as surely there as the flower. But you have the superabundant mental life and individuality, which admits of shifting a personality and speaking the truth still. That is the highest faculty, the strongest and rarest, which exercises itself in art. We are all agreed there is none so great faculty as the dramatic. Several times you have hinted to me that I made you careless for the drama, and it has puzzled me to fancy how it could be, when I understand myself so clearly both the difficulty and the glory of dramatic art. Yet I am conscious of wishing you to take the other crown besides, and after having made your own creatures speak in clear human voices, to speak yourself out of that personality which God made, and with the voice which he tuned into such power and sweetness of speech. I do not think that, with all that music in you, only your own personality should be dumb, nor that having thought so much and deeply on life and its ends, you should not teach what you have learned, in the directest and most impressive way, the mask thrown off, however moist with the breath. and it is not, I believe, by the dramatic medium that poets teach most impressively. I have seemed to observe that. It is too difficult for the common reader to analyze, and to discern between the vivid and the earnest. Also he is apt to understand better always when he sees the lips move. Now here is yourself, with your wonderful faculty. It is wondered at and recognized on all sides where there are eyes to see. It is called wonderful and admirable. Yet with an inferior power you might have taken yourself closer to the hearts and lives of men, and made yourself dearer, though being less great. Therefore I do want you to do this with your surpassing power. It will be so easy to you to speak, and so noble when spoken. Not that I usen't to fancy I could see you and know you in a reflex image in your creations. I used, you remember. How these broken lights and forms look strange and unlike now to me when I stand by the complete idea. Yes, now I feel that no one can know you worthily by those poems. Only I guessed a little. Now let us have your own voice, speaking of yourself, if the voice may not hurt the speaker, which is my fear. Evening. Thank you, dearest, dearest. I have your parcel. I have your letters. 3 letters to-day. It is certainly feast day with me. Thank you, my own dearest. The drawings I had just fixed in my mind, courageously to ask for, because as you meant me to keep them, I did not see why I should throw away a fortune, and they returned to me with interest. I observe these new vivid sketches. Some day I shall put them into a book, as you should have done. Then for the Roman ode, and all the rest, thank you, thank you. I looked here and looked there, though, for a letter. I could not find it at first, and was just saying to myself quite articulately, what wickedness! Meaning that it was wickedness in you to send me a parcel without a word, when I came upon the folded paper. For I looked inside the books, be sure. I did not toss them away. There's the gratitude of the world, you see, and of womankind in particular. There's the malign spirit of the genus coffee-cup thrown-a-room. Talking of which coffee-cups, you dare me to it, which is imprudent, to say the least of it. I heard once of her most gracious Majesty's throwing a teacup, whereupon Albertus Magnus, who is no conjurer, could find nothing better to do than to walk out of the room in solemn silence. If I had been he, I should have tied the royal hands, I think, for when women get to be warlike after that demonstrative fashion, it seems to me to be allowable to teach them that they are not the strongest. I say it, never thinking of my license to throw coffee-cups, which you granted, knowing very well what I know intimately, that. I have a theory about you. Was ever anybody in the world, a woman at least, angry with you? If anyone ever tried, did she not fail in the first breath of the trying? Go out to curse like the prophet, and bless instead. Tell me if anyone was ever angry with you. It is impossible, I know perfectly. Therefore, as to the coffee-cup license, the divine Achilles, invulnerable all but the heel, might as well have said to his dearest foe, "Draw out your sword, O Diomed, and strike me across the head, prick me in the forehead, slash me over the ears, and that stand for a proof of courage." What stuff I do write, to be sure! I was out to-day, walking, with Arabelle and Flush, and rested at the bookseller's, but as I went farther than the other day, I let Stormy carry me upstairs. It is such a long way. Say how you are, dearest. You do not. Shall you walk so fast when you walk with me under the trees? I shall not let you. I shall hang back, as Flush does, when he won't go with a string. Ah, little, altogether, you know perhaps what a hard degree that B.A. is to take, the B.A. which is not a bachelor's. No, for the rest, it was not any Brown on earth, but the only Browning of the great genius, who was shown up as intimate friend to the Miss Cokers, and elect husband of that cloud, Miss Campbell, the great heiress, all in proportion, observe. But I do entreat you not to say a word to Dr. White or another. Why should you? It is mere nonsense, so do let it evaporate quietly. Why, with all my doubts, for which you have blamed me, at the thickest and saddest of the doubting, it never was what people could say of you that could move me. and this is so foolish, and unbelieved even by the very persons who say it perhaps. Let it pass away with other dust in the wind. It is not worth the watering. May God bless you. This is my last letter already. I had another criticism today from America in a book called Thoughts on the Poets, which is written by a Mr. Tuckerman, and selects its poets on the most singular principle, or rather on none at all, beginning with Petrarch, ending with Bryant, receiving Tennyson, Proctor, Hunt, and your bar, and not a word of you. Stupid book. Petrarch and Alfieri are the only foreign poets admitted. Criticisms swept back to the desk from the magazines, I dare say. Very kind to me. You shall see if you like. And now, good night at last. It must come. Have I not written you one letter as long as the three? Only not worth a third as much, that I know. Wholly and ever your, Ba. Oh, I must speak, though I meant to be silent, though first I meant to keep the great subject of the statesman for an explosion on Wednesday. I gave up the early poems because I felt contented to read them afterwards, but listen, my statesman I will not give up. Now listen, I expect nothing at all from them. They were written for another person, and under peculiar circumstances. They are probably as bad as anything written by you can be. Will that do to say? And may I see them? Now I ask ever so humbly, dearest. End of section 189.
Section 190 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B, 3:30 p.m. Tuesday. Postmark, May 26, 1846. Dearest, your dearest of notes only arrived at 2 o'clock, and Carlyle has just been with me. Came on horseback for the express purpose of strolling about, so that I was forced, you see. He is gone again, and there is only time to tell you why no more is told, but tomorrow will supply all deficiency. Bless you, my dearest, best Bar. How I love you. Your own. Poor Captain Jones is dead. You may see in the papers. End of section 190.
Section 191 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Thursday morning. Postmark May 28th, 1846. Dearest, it is my fancy to write quickly this morning and take my letter to the post myself. Oh, I shall do it this time. There will be no obstacle. The office is just below Hodgson's, the bookseller's. And so with this letter, please to understand that I go to you twice and wholly, once in the spirit and again in the body. But there is nothing to tell you, except that I think of you with the thought which never can change essentially, while it deepens always. What I meant to say yesterday was simply that I, knowing that, should be bad if I could fail practically to myself and you. I have known from the beginning the whole painful side of what is before me, also. I should have no excuse, therefore, for any weakness in any fear. Should I not be bad, then, and more unworthy of you than even according to my own account, if the obstacle came from me? It never can. Remember to be sure of it. A change of feeling, indeed, would be a different thing, and we think exactly alike on the fit consequences of it. Which change is, however, absolutely impossible in my position and to me, for reasons. You guess at some of them, some are spoken, and others cannot be. In one word for all, life seems to come to me only through you. I am your very own, Ba. End of section 191.
Section 192 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Thursday. Postmark, May 28, 1846. There is a long 4 days more of waiting. I feel more and ever more how, wanting you, my life wants all it can have. Dear Bar, never wonder that I fancy at times such an event's occurrence as you tell me I need not fear. I shall always fear. Never can I hold you sufficiently fast, I shall think. So if my jewel must be taken from me, let some eagle stoop down for it suddenly, baffling all human precaution, as I look on my treasure on a tower's top miles and miles inland. Don't let me have to remember, though but in a minute of life afterwards, that I let it drop into the sea through foolishly balancing it in my open hand over the water. There is one of Barr's myths, accepting all Barr's felicitousness of application and glory of invention. But then it has all my own love and worship of Barr's self, all I care to be distinguished by. I hope you go out this fine morning. The wind is cold, to be sure, but London is much warmer than this place, and the wind kept off by the houses. I have got 2 of Mr. Kenyon's kind notes to confirm the appointment for Wednesday, when Mrs. Jameson is to be of the party, and to invite me to meet Landor on Tuesday, so that for 3 days running I shall be in Barr's very neighbourhood. For if the wind can't get through houses and walls, Barr can and does, as my heart knows. Might I not see you for a moment on the Wednesday? There will be time to contrive, to concert. But the worst is that when I see you I contrive nothing, nor do you help me, you Barr. Else, out of these walks, who is to object to my going out to see the Thames Tunnel or the Tower, by way of Wimpole Street, wanting the organ of locality, as I am said to, whereas I am all one consciousness of the influence of one locality, turning as my whole heart and soul turn to Barr, my dearest, dearest, whom may God bless and requite. I can only kiss you as I do, and be your very own, my Barr, as I am and shall be ever. End of section 192.
Section 193 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Thursday, postmark May 29th, 1846. Dearest, dearest, I thought I had lost my letter tonight, for not a sound came like a postman's knock. I thought I had lost my letter, talking of losing jewels. I waited and waited, and at last broke silence to Arabelle with, "When will the post come?" "Not to-night," said she, "it is nearly 10." On which I exclaimed so pitifully, and with such a desperate sense of loss, "You mean to say that I shall have no letter to-night?" But after she had laughed a very little, she went downstairs to search the letter-box, and brought me what I wanted. "And you think it possible that I should give up my letters and their golden fountain? I, while I live and have understanding? I can't fancy what manner of eagles you believe in. If in real life eagles, why, it is as probable as any other thing of the sort that I or you should be snatched away by an eagle, the eagle who used to live, for instance, at the Colosseum of Regent's Park. And when I ride away upon an eagle, I may take a wrong counsel perhaps that hour from other birds of the air, but till then I am yours to have and to hold, unless, as you say, you open your hand wide and cry with a distinctive voice, 'Go!' It shall be your doing and not mine if we two are to part, or God's own doing, through illness and death. And the way to avert danger is to avoid observation and discussion as much as we can, and we have not been frightened much yet, now have we? As for Wednesday, there is time to think. But how can you leave your sister? You cannot. So unless you derange your myth altogether, and find a trysting place for us, each mounted on an eagle, in Nephelococcygia, we had better be satisfied, it seems to me, with Monday and Saturday. I was out to-day, as you saw by my letter, which with my own hand I dropped into the post. I like to do it beyond what you discern, and how the sun shone, and the little breath of wind could do nobody harm, I felt. Also, there was the autography in the shop window to see before I sate down in the shop. So you were thought of by necessity, besides the free will. Do you not see that I am bound to you hand and foot? Why do you not see what God sees? But it is late, and the rest must be for tomorrow. The centre of the rose tree sent today a great heliotrope, so presently you will have to seek me in a wood. Everywhere your own, Ba. End of section 193.
Section 194 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Friday. Postmark May 29, 1846. My own darling, your little note was a great delight to me last night when I expected nothing. And though I do not hear today, I will believe you are well after the walk. The walk. What a divine fancy! Not mentioned by Quarles. And then the words that follow the good news of the walk. Those assurances. Oh, my best, dearest Bar. It is all right that I cannot speak here. If I could, by some miracle speak, it would be foolish. But my life lies before you to take and direct, and keep or give away. I am altogether your own. I come in rather tired from town, having spent the morning at the exhibition, and made calls besides. Etty's picture of the sirens is abominable, though it looks admirable beside another picture of his. Did I not tell you that he had chosen the sirens for a subject? Oh, dearest, beyond all dearness, now, at this moment only, your last and pro tempore best letter comes to me. One can't scold and kiss at the same time, so let the wretched post arrangements be unmentioned for the moment. There is enough to get up a revolution about, I do think. But you spoil me and undo me almost. Ought to do so, at least. They were too delicious to bear, the things you say to me. Why will you not say rather what I feel? For you can, perhaps, being what you are, and let me subscribe it. It is a real pain to me to feel as I feel, and speak no more than I speak. Again the time urges, just when I want most to go on writing. But tomorrow I will do nothing else. Take this now, sweet, sweet Bar, with my whole heart that loves you. Your R. End of section 194.
Section 195 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Friday. Postmark May 30th, 1846. I have your letter, you who cannot write. The contrariety is a part of the miracle. After all, it seems to me that you can write for yourself pretty well, rather too well, I used to think from the beginning. But if you persist in the proposition about my doing it for you, leaving room for your signature, shall it be this way? Show me how to get rid of you. Signed, R.B. Now isn't it I who am, not balancing my jewel over the gulf, but actually tossing it up in the air out of sheer levity of joyousness? Only it is not perhaps such dangerous play as it looks. There may be a little string, perhaps, tying it to my finger, which, if it is not imprudence in act, is imprudence in fact, you see. Dearest, I committed a felony for your sake to-day, so never doubt that I love you. We went to the botanical gardens, where it is unlawful to gather flowers, and I was determined to gather this for you, and the gardeners were here and there, they seemed everywhere, but I stooped down and gathered it. Is it felony or burglary on green leaves, or what is the name of the crime? Would the people give me up to the police, I wonder? Transi de peur I was. listening to Arabelle's declaration that all gathering of flowers in these gardens is highly improper, and I made her finish her discourse, standing between me and the gardeners, to prove that I was the better for it. How pretty those gardens are, by the way! We went to the summer house and sate there, and then on to the empty seats where the bands sit on your high days. What I enjoy most to see is the green under the green, where the grass stretches under trees. That is something unspeakable to me in the beauty of it. And to stand under a tree and feel the green shadow of the tree. I never knew before the difference of the sensation of a green shadow and a brown one. I seemed to feel that green shadow through and through me till it went out at the soles of my feet and mixed with the other green below. Is it nonsense or not? Remember that by too much use we lose the knowledge and apprehension of things, and that I may feel, therefore, what you do not feel. But in everything I felt you, and always, dearest beloved, you were nearer to me than the best. Well, to go on with my story, coming home and submitting to be carried upstairs because I was tired, the news was that Miss Bailey had waited to see me 3/4 of an hour. Then she sate with me an hour, and oh, such kind, insisting, persisting plans about Italy! I did not know what to say, so I was niais and grateful, and said thank you, as I could. Did Mrs. Jameson tell you of her scheme of going to Florence for 2 years and to Venice for 1, taking her niece with her in order to an artistical education? And Mr. Betsy, who is the most accurate of men, furnishes the details of necessary expenses, and assures her in his programme that she may walk in silk attire and drive her carriage like an English aristocrat for 300 a year at Florence, but the place is English-ridden, filled and polluted. Sorrento is better, or even Pisa. We will keep our Siren Isles to ourselves, will we not? And now tell me, was there not a picture of sirens by Etty exhibited years ago, which was also abominable, as I thought when I saw it? Is it the same picture returning like a disquieted ghoul? Much more that than like a siren at all, if it is the same. I remember it was scarcely to be looked at for hideousness, though I heard some carnivorous connoisseurs praising the colouring. Foreigners might refer such artistical successes to our national beef, le beefsteak ideal, the materialism of art. Can you love me so? Do you? Will you always? And is any of that love lost, do you think, as the saying is? Indeed it is not. I put golden basins all round, the reverse shape of lachrymatories, to catch every drop as it falls, so that when we two shall meet together in the new world, I may look in your face, as I cannot at this moment, and say, none of the love was lost, though all of it was undeserved. May God bless you, dearest, best. My heart is in you, I think. You would laugh to see the books I take up, first Strafford, then Suetonius, to see about your Caesar, then the Naples book. Oh, but I find you out in the Statesman, for all the dim light. Your very own Ba. End of section 195.
Section 196 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Beeswaxcandle. R.B. to E.B.B. Saturday. Postmark May 30, 1846. Oh, yes, do show me how to get rid of you, my best Bar, for so shall I have the virtuous delight of deciding to keep you, instead of being wholly kept by you. It is all out of my head now, how I used to live when I was my own, and if you can, by one more witchery, give me back that feeling for once. Bar, I have no heart to write more nonsense when I can take your dearest self into my arms. Yet I shall never quite lie quiet and happy, I do think. I shall be always wishing you would be angry and cruel and unjust for a moment, for my love overflows the bounds, needs to prove itself, all which is foolish, I know. Today, for some unknown reason, is a day of hope with me. All bright things seem possible. I was feeling them so when your note came as I sat in the garden. And when I saw the flower, Paracelsus' own, they usually ornament his pictures with it, I said something on the subject in the poem too, and gave a note about Flammula citronella herba Paracelso multum familiaris. When I saw that, and read on and on, every now and then laying the letter down to feel the entire joy, and when the end came, Bar, dearest Bar, it was with me then as now, as always after steady thinking of what you are to me. I cannot tell you, but for the past, utterly irrespective of the future, for what you have been, this love cannot cease though you were transformed into all you are not, nor ever could be. I mean that after the blow struck, the natural vibration must follow and continue its proper period, and that my love for what I have received from you already must last to my life's end, cannot end sooner. Shall I continue to love you? You said in Thursday's letter, we have not been frightened much yet. Our meetings have been uninterrupted hitherto, and these letters, yes, that I am most thankful for. Whatever should happen, our real relation one to the other is wholly known. That fact has been established beyond possibility of doubt, at least. I don't make myself understood here, I know. But think, if at the very beginning any accident had separated us. But I will believe in the end now and henceforth. I will believe you are my very own Bar, my best dream's realization, my life's fulfillment and consummation. And having discovered you, I shall live and die with you. So may God dispose. I will write the rest. Nothing is here. A longer letter tomorrow. But now my mind is too full of you. The poor hand gets despised for lagging after. All my thoughts are with you, dearest. May God bless you and make me less unworthy, being your own R. One more day, one and Monday. See what kindness of Mr. Kenyon. I do not accept, having no need to trouble him as he desires, but see how kind. End of section 196.
Section 197 of the Letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Sonia. E.B.B. to R.B. Saturday, postmark May 30th, 1846. You shall have a visit from me on the 7th day as on the others, I think, because I remember you every day equally, and because, without waiting for your Saturday's letter, I have always with me enough of you to thank you. This morning Henrietta and I went as usual to Hodgson's, and took possession of the chair in waiting, as Flush did of the whole territory, setting himself, with all the airs of a landed proprietor, to snap at the shop-boy. Nota bene, Flush is likely to injure my popularity if I take him about with me much. He has been used, you see, to be Caesar in his own house, and the transition to being Caesar everywhere is the easiest thing in the world. Yet as to leaving him at home, it is impossible, not to mention other objections. His delight in going out in the carriage is scarcely a natural thing, but I have told you of it. Yesterday I was in the back drawing-room, waiting to go out, and just said to him, "Flush, go and see if the carriage is come." Instantly he ran to the front windows, standing on his hind legs, and looking up the street and down. Now Mr. Kenyon would declare that that was my invention, yet it is the literal truth of history. Coming back from Hodgson's, we passed our door and walked to 57 and home, which is an improvement in the distance. Then I walked upstairs to the drawing-room, and was carried the rest of the way. May I be tired a little after it all? Just a little, perhaps. Henrietta dined at Mr. Low's yesterday, and met Miss Camilla Toulmin, who who was gracious, and Professor Forbes, who can do nothing without the polka, and sundries. There was a splendid dinner, and wine of all vintages. One is in a strait in such cases to know how to praise at once the hospitable intentions and to blame the bad taste. Surely it is bad taste in a man like Mr. Lau, who lives by his genius, to give ambitious dinners like a man who lives by his dinners. The true dignity of simplicity in these things were worth such a man's holding, one might think. But he is kind and liberal, and a good artist, and sent me a very gracious invitation to go and see his works. The Hadleys are likely to be in England this summer again, more's the pity. I am fond of them, but would rather not see them just now, and not be seen by them, for eyes have they, and can see. My uncle Hadley comes next week, comes to London for several weeks, that is certain, and my aunt, after settling the younger part of her family at Barrett for the summer, ponders coming, as I behold from afar off, with her daughter Arabella, who is to be married immediately to the younger brother of the great brewery partner, Barclay and Bevan, a Mr. Bevan. But they will not be in this house, and we must manage as we can, dearest. One leap over Sunday, and Monday comes bringing you. Then I shall have you near on Tuesday besides, and Wednesday afterwards. How the cup overflows! May God bless you, my beloved. It is not exaggeration to say that I feel you in the air and the sun. Ever and ever your own I am. Ba. End of section 197. End of the letters of Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Barrett, Part 2, by Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Browning.